All right, Nick, let's talk about the Wisconsin Badgers. This is a team who brought in a lot of new coaching staff, a lot of new players, a lot of new transfers. They're really transforming this offense with Phil Longo at the offensive helm here. It's going to be a new look, a new up-tempo, pass-friendly scheme, something that Wisconsin has not really seen in the past, Nick. I think it's going to be very exciting, but I have an update today on some key players in this new offense that are really starting to shine in spring practice.
Yeah, Miles, it's obviously big that they have these new guys in this offense, making those, taking those big leaps, getting familiar, making big plays. There'll be dividends for them in the future. But before we get to the future, Wisconsin fans, we want to hear from you in the comment section below, like we always like to. Let's take a step back and look at the past of Wisconsin Badgers football. And got an interesting question for you guys. Who is your favorite quarterback in Wisconsin Badger history? It's an interesting list of guys to potentially pull from. We're curious what you have to see. So make sure you give us your answer, favorite quarterback in Wisconsin history, in the comment section below. All right, Miles, what you got? What's going on with the Badgers?
Yeah, Nick. So we all know Wisconsin has really been making some big time moves. Everything is looking good down there. Mordecai is down at the helm in the quarterback position, but there's some receivers, Nick, that have transferred over to Wisconsin, and they're looking really good. And I'm talking about none other than C.J. Williams, the Southern Cal transfer. He came in and he's been a number 2 guy, but I'm going to go pull up the article here, Nick. He really started to get some number 1 reps here recently and has started to impress the coach down there. And this is what they said, Nick. Southern Cal transfer C.J. Williams has worked as a number 2 receiver behind Chamiri Dyke during much of spring practice, but he earned reps this past Tuesday with the first team offense on 2 separate occasions, once during skeleton drills and later on during the 11-on-11. And in both of those instances, Dyke took snaps with the second team offense. Dyke's consistency and experience have stood out, but it was notable that coaches gave Williams more of a look with the top group. The more comfortable he seems to be in practice, the more plays he is making, Nick. And I think this is pretty big for Wisconsin coming in. Having a guy like Williams, a big body receiver who can go down, make those good catches. He's not necessarily the fastest guy, but he's fast enough. He can go up, catch the 50-50 balls. He's a guy that can make plays, and he's getting more comfortable in this pass-friendly Longo air raid-ish offense. And the more comfortable he gets, the more plays he's making in practice. I think there's a chance that he moves up the depth chart and is a true number 1 receiver on this Wisconsin offense. That, Nick, I don't think any position is really nailed down at this point. Everything's open. Everyone's kind of battling. All the coaches are keeping their eyes out in practice, letting people know, like you can earn a spot on this roster. And I really like the development of Williams so far because he looked to be a pretty solid player coming out of California, 4-star type of guy. And I think he can really be a big-time playmaker for this team if he's given the chance. What do you think about his development thus far in spring practice, Nate?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to understand, as Wisconsin Badger fans are very well aware of, this offense is a 180-degree shift of what they've been the better part of the last couple of decades, right? When they have the 2 tight ends, fullback, running back, that old school power football scheme, complete flip, like you alluded to under Longo, much more of an air raid spread kind of attack. That's going to be just a massive seismic shift for everybody currently on the roster, right? Obviously, the majority of the roster, the overwhelming majority of the roster, are guys recruited from the prior regime, and they brought in some transfers like Williams and other guys from Cincinnati, Quincy Burrows as well, another wide receiver. And they're going to have to rely on these transfers because learning a whole new offense is one thing, but it's also a different challenge when you're recruited for your physical attributes for a different offense as well. Because there are different tools that fall into different offenses. Like, it just makes logical sense, right? Obviously, if you're a power football team, you have a different kind of quarterback than you do if you have a spread team. Obviously, the same thing goes at wide receiver as well, even though if the differences aren't quite as sparse as they're at the quarterback position. But anyway, so what really comes down to is you need some of these transfer wide receivers to really step up, because some of these other wide receivers that were already part of the Badger program, they're going to go through some growing pains. They're going to have some headaches as they try and adjust themselves to a completely different offense than they want to used to. You got guys like Burrows, you got guys like Williams who have played in air raid offenses, who have played in spread offenses, who can come in, get the terminology, get the scheme, understand how it's played, understand the tempo, and really push this team forward. Because I think that's what's going to be the challenge for Wisconsin early on and potentially all of next season is getting all these former Badger guys on the offense side of the ball to get acclimated to the new scheme. And having transfers step up that are familiar with the scheme will be huge for them to kind of fill in the gaps as some of the other guys, the more core players, whether they're starters or otherwise, kind of get brought up to speed in this new Longo scheme. And that's one of the things people forget, right? Because obviously, you know, you look at Wisconsin, they do have the talent on paper, but it's a whole new dynamic. And although it makes sense in the classroom and may make sense in spring ball, once the pads start flying against live competition in the fall, a lot of these guys are going to resort to the old habits, and you're going to need guys like Williams and like Burrows that can step in and just execute the playbook and execute the offense to allow this Wisconsin Badgers offense to function in key moments next season. So long story short, Miles, I think the fact that Williams is stepping up is going to be huge for them, along with Quincy Burrows potentially as well going forward, to allow them to bridge the gap as the former offensive guys on the Badger side get acclimated to Longo's scheme.